Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you are the judges of the evidence to be laid before you. Be just and fear not, for the true administration of justice is the foundation of good government.
Famous jury trials, dramatizations of cases taken from actual court history. The names of persons and places have been altered to protect the identity of those concerned.
The State versus Benjamin Harris.
Tonight's famous jury trial features the crime of arson. The crime of deliberately setting fire to a building. Every year, incendiary fires destroy property worth millions of dollars, endanger the lives and property of thousands of innocent citizens. So now we bring you one of the most famous arson cases of recent years, the trial of Benjamin Harris, truck driver, who was accused of setting fire to his employer's place of business. And when the fire was finally extinguished, the Ballard factory was a charred and blackened ruin. Commence tonight's famous jury trial.
The State versus Benjamin Harris.
The danger to human life and the terrific property loss that was caused by the fire had aroused the fierce indignation of the public against the defendant. And the courtroom was crowded as the district attorney outlined the case against Benjamin Harris to the jury.
The defendant, Benjamin Harris, was an employee of Henry Ballard, the owner of the Ballard Perfume Company. He drove a delivery truck for that concern. And we will prove that he deliberately set the fire that destroyed the Ballard plant and caused losses amounting to hundreds of thousands of dollars to innocent, hard-working people whose property was also destroyed in the fire and many of whom carried no fire insurance. I call my first witness, Mr. Henry Ballard.
Henry Ballard! Henry Ballard! Henry Ballard, take the stand. Do you solemnly swear the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Mr. Ballard, you are the owner of the factory that was burned, the perfume manufacturing plant.
Yes, that is correct.
Now, was there any great quantity of chemicals and finished perfume on hand at the time of the fire?
Yes, about $100,000 worth.
I see. Now, Mr. Ballard, the defendant, Benjamin Harris, was in your employ up to a short time before the fire.
Yes, he was. He drove a delivery truck for me. He was with me for about 2 years, but I never trusted him completely. And 2 weeks before the fire, I discharged him for stealing.
I object. There's no proof of such a charge.
Thus then, strike out the words for stealing.
Well, let us say you were satisfied in your own mind that Harris was a thief.
Yes, I was. $50 was taken from my office safe. No one but Harris had any opportunity to take the money.
And did you see the defendant again after you dismissed him?
Yes. On the morning of the day of the fire, he came into my office and made a number of wild statements as to what he would do if I didn't lay off him, as he expressed it.
Now, what was he referring to?
Well, he meant the fact that I felt it my duty to inform his prospective employers that I had fired Harris for stealing.
And he threatened you?
He began by appealing for sympathy. He gave me a hard luck story, and he said...
I don't expect you to take me back, boss, but I gotta get a job. No one will take me as long as you keep telling them that I stole from you.
I'm just telling them the truth, Harris. They have a right to know.
But it isn't the truth, Mr. Ballard. I swear I never touched that money.
I don't see any point in going on with this.
But look, you gotta listen to me. My wife's gonna have a baby. I gotta take care of her. I gotta get a job.
You should have thought of that before you stole from me, Harris.
I never stole a penny from you. Mr. Ballard, if you don't lay off me, I swear I'll get even with you. It's the last thing I ever do.
And what happened then?
Well, Harris made violent threats against me, and then he left.
And that night, your establishment was set on fire?
Yes.
Thank you. Cross-examine.
Mr. Ballard, where were you on the night of the fire?
I left the factory around 6 o'clock. I went to my club, had dinner there, and spent the evening playing cards there. In fact, I was still there when I was notified of the fire, which broke out around midnight.
Mr. Ballard, when you dismissed the defendant and charged him with stealing, Did you prosecute him for the alleged theft?
No, the amount stolen was too small to warrant the nuisance of preferring charges.
So, without giving the defendant a chance to clear his name, you nevertheless didn't hesitate to take away his livelihood by accusing him of stealing to his prospective employers?
His guilt was perfectly clear to me. Other employers had a right to protection.
Your Honor, I'm through with the witness for the moment, but I wish to preserve the right to recall him to the stand after the defendant has testified, and to examine this witness on that testimony.
I will excuse the witness. You may recall him later if you wish.
Thank you.
Call Joseph Gordon.
Joseph Gordon?
Joseph Gordon. Joseph Gordon. Joseph Gordon, will you tell this court your occupation?
I'm counterman at the Circle Cafe.
And that's near where the Ballard factory stood?
Yes, sir.
Right. Now, on the morning of October 17th, that's the day on which the fire occurred, did you see the defendant?
Yes, sir. He came in for a cup of coffee about 10:30. He says he come around to tell Mr. Ballard to lay off of him or else.
And did the defendant make any threats against Mr. Ballard?
Well, he was pretty sore.
Answer the question. Didn't he say he was going to get even with Ballard if it was the last thing he ever did?
Well, yeah.
Take the witness.
Joe, how long have you known Benny Harris?
3 years.
Did you like him?
Yeah, Benny was a swell kid.
Did you ever know him to do anything violent or mean, revengeful?
No, never.
And on that day, did he actually say in so many words that he would set fire to the Ballard factory?
No, he was talking kind of wild, but it was just talk.
Thank you, Joe. That's all.
Call John Altman. John Altman.
John Altman?
John Altman. Your occupation, Mr. Altman?
I am an investigator for the fire insurance company insuring the Ballard factory. I am also a chemist.
Did you investigate the Ballard factory fire?
Yes, I did. And it was clearly of incendiary origin.
You mean somebody deliberately set the fire?
Yes. A spectroscope analysis of the ashes proved that an inflammable liquid known to chemists as liquid X was used to start the fire. This liquid is so inflammable as to be almost an explosive and has recently been used in a number of incendiary fires.
Are the chemicals out of which this liquid is made in common use in perfume factories?
Oh, yes.
I see. Is there any chance that these chemicals could have been accidentally mixed or could have flowed together during the course of the fire?
No. The chemicals used to make liquid X have to be mixed in a particular order, or the resulting liquid will be quite harmless. I would say that it would be practically impossible for the ingredients to be mixed in the right order by accident.
But anyone who had access to the chemicals in the plant could have mixed up a quantity of this liquid quickly and easily.
Well, yes, if he knew the formula.
Thank you. You're a witness.
Mr. Altman, what was the value of the stock destroyed in the fire as shown on the books of the Ballard Company?
It was worth roughly about $100,000.
And that is the amount of the claim filed by Mr. Ballard for the stock alone?
Yes.
Could you tell by an analysis of the remains after the fire whether all the stock listed had actually been destroyed in the fire?
No, we could tell roughly what had been destroyed, but it was impossible to tell what quantity was destroyed.
Then, if, say, $90,000 worth of stock had been secretly removed from the plant and stored elsewhere, you would not be able to prove it?
Well, no.
Mr. Altman, I'd like to ask you a few more questions about this liquid X. Has it any odor?
Oh, yes, it has a very distinctive odor. No one who smelled it once would be likely to forget it.
And you say it is easily and quickly made out of common chemicals?
Yes.
Mr. Altman, which of two men would you consider more likely to have that knowledge? A trained chemist who is a manufacturer of perfumes, or one of his employees with only a knowledge of high school chemistry?
I object to that grossly improper question. Work it out.
That's all, Mr. Altman.
Paul Herman Zarbush.
Herman Zarbush?
Herman Zarbush? Mr. Zarbush, you live in the tenement house opposite the Ballard plant?
Yes, I live there now for 5 years, ever since I come to this country.
Where was your place of business, Mr. Zarbush?
It was next to the Ballard Company. I have a small wholesale house dealing in what they call factory seconds, but it burnt up in the fire.
Yes. Now, Did you see the defendant on the night of October 17th, the night of the fire?
Yes, I did.
Tell us the circumstances, please.
I was sitting on the front stoop smoking my pipe when I see Benny Harris come down the street. That was near 11 o'clock already. I see him go to the office door of the Ballard factory, and he opened the door and go inside.
And do you know how long he stayed inside?
It was 11:45 when he came out and walked away. I think maybe I say something to the cop on our beat, because we all know Benny is fired and he has no business in the Ballard place, and then just then I smell smoke, and then I see the flames in the factory.
And what did you do?
I ran to the corner and put in the fire alarm, but when the engine come, it is too late already. The factory is burned down.
Thank you, Mr. Zarbush. Cross-examine.
Mr. Zarbush, when Benny Harris came up the block to the factory that night, did he appear to be making any effort to conceal himself or to disguise his appearance?
That I cannot say. I only know that he was there, and when he left, then came the fire. The fire that burned down my little store and everything I have in the world. 5 years ago, when I come to this country, I have nothing. Already I am old man, but I work hard, I save, I build up my little business, and then come the fire, and now again I have nothing.
Your Honor,
Mr. Zarbush, I didn't start that fire. I swear I didn't.
Well, I saw you there, Benny.
Order, please. Let all that last be stricken off. Have you any more questions, Counselor?
no more questions.
The state rests, Your Honor.
In the face of the evidence, there were few who doubted but that Benny Harris had deliberately set fire to the Ballard factory for revenge. But there were some, aware of deeper undercurrents in the evidence, who felt there might be a chance that Benny Harris was innocent. We will continue with this dramatic trial in just a moment.
And we will prove that Benny Harris is the victim of a diabolical, cunning, fiendish frame-up. We will prove to your entire satisfaction that Benny Harris is innocent. I will now call the defendant as my first witness to tell you in his own words just what happened on the day of October 17th.
The defendant, Benjamin Harris, took the witness stand and was duly sworn in.
Benny, you were discharged by Mr. Ballard about 2 weeks before the fire.
Yeah. He said I'd stolen $50 out of his safe, but it's a lie, sir. I never touched a cent of any money that wasn't mine.
When did you see Mr. Ballard again?
Well, the day of the fire, I asked him to lay off me so I could get another job.
And he refused.
Yeah. And then, well, I guess I lost my temper and said a lot of things I didn't really mean.
And did you see Mr. Ballard again?
Yeah, that night he rung me up and said he'd found out he'd made a mistake about the money, and he apologized and said he wanted to take me back.
And did you agree to go back to work for him?
Well, I jumped at the chance. I needed a job. I still saw it, Mr. Ballard, but he was kind of decent over the phone. Said he'd never forgive himself for what he'd done, and he promised to make it up to me. And then he asked if I could come around and talk things over with him right away.
Go around where?
To the factory. He said he was calling from the factory.
And what time was this?
Oh, about 10:30 that night.
And did you agree to go?
Yeah, sure. Ballard said he had to step out of the factory for a minute, but he'd leave the office door unlocked for me and for me to go on in and wait for him.
And then you went to the factory?
Yeah. I got there about 11. Nobody was there, but the office door was unlocked, like Mr. Ballard said, so I went inside and waited.
And what happened?
Well, nothing happened for about 3/4 of an hour. And then the phone rang, and I answered it. It was Mr. Ballard. He said he couldn't get to the factory again that night, and for me to lock up and go on home, and he'd see me in the morning.
And then what happened?
Nothing. I went home. The next morning, I found out that the fire had broken out a few minutes after I left the factory, but I didn't know nothing about it. And I never set that fire. You gotta believe me, I didn't do it.
I do believe you, Benny. Your witness.
Harris, you admit you were fired for stealing.
No, I never stole anything.
But that was the reason Mr. Ballard gave for firing.
Well, yeah.
You admit that on the morning of October 17th, you threatened to revenge yourself on Ballard if it was the last thing you ever did.
I didn't mean it. I never thought of doing anything like setting a fire.
Harris, you went to the factory and you stayed inside for 45 minutes alone, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
Weren't you mixing chemicals stored in the plant to make a highly inflammable explosive mixture? Didn't you pour this liquid all through the factory and then didn't you set a fuse and leave the building?
No, that's all lies. I wouldn't know how to do that even if I wanted to. And I never thought of doing anything like that. I never set a fire. I didn't.
No. You just sat in there for 45 minutes alone, doing nothing. That's all, Harris.
Call Louise Harris.
Louise Harris. Louise Harris. Louise Harris.
Mrs. Harris, you are the wife of the defendant.
Yes, I am.
Do you remember a telephone call that your husband received the night before the Ballard fire?
Yeah, very clearly.
Well, what was his manner after you received that call?
Well, all I'd heard, of course, was his end of the conversation, but I could tell from his voice that it was important, and when he hung up, his eyes were shining, and he threw his arms around me and said he'd got his job back, and he had to go out and see Mr. Ballard about it right away.
And your husband was happy, in good spirits?
Yeah, he was like a little boy on Christmas Day. That's how happy he was.
Take the witness.
Just one question, Mrs. Harris. If your husband is convicted and sent to jail, you'll have no one to support you and your little baby, eh?
Well, no.
That's all.
Your Honor, I would now like to call Mr. Henry Ballard back to the stand, as I said I would earlier in these proceedings.
Permission to recall the witness was given by the judge, and the court was tense as the re-examination began.
Mr. Ballard, haven't you in the past 6 months suffered a number of serious financial losses?
I have had losses, yes, but I wouldn't describe them as serious.
Didn't you determine to recoup your losses by setting fire to your own factory and making a fraudulent insurance claim?
Your Honor, I object. That's an outrageous and completely unfounded charge. All of my books have been examined and found to be in perfect order.
I overrule the objection. The answer may stand.
Didn't you secretly remove most of the valuable stock from your plant and store it elsewhere in preparation for this fire?
Your Honor, I object to this line of questioning. There is not the slightest evidence that any stock was secretly removed from the factory nor secretly stored somewhere. Why, if there were, I would have seen to it that Mr. Ballard was indicted myself. These are just wild, unfounded, slanderous charges made to befuddle the facts in the minds of the jury.
Your Honor, a man's freedom and the fate of his wife and child are at stake here. I ask for the latitude of the court in questioning this witness. And I ask that the witness be instructed to answer my questions.
Very well. You may ask any proper questions, Counselor, if you can assure the court that you have a sound reason for asking them.
I give the court that assurance, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Well, Mr. Ballard, did you remove the stock that was insured for $100,000?
No, I did not.
And then, with the frame-up complete and the trap ready to be sprung, did you not, on the evening of October 17, mix together certain chemicals at your factory to form an explosively inflammable liquid known as Liquid X?
I did not. I don't even know what chemicals are used in the making of Liquid X.
You did not mix this liquid and pour it through your factory and then set a 5-hour time fuse, which would ignite the liquid and start a fire at midnight that night?
I tell you, I don't know anything about this liquid.
You did not then leave the plant and go to your club to establish an ironclad alibi?
I went to my club, yes. The rest is false.
Mr. Ballard, did you not, on the evening of October 17, inveigle Benjamin Harris into going to your factory late at night alone?
No.
Did you not see that he remained there for 45 minutes?
No.
And did you not arrange for him to leave the factory only a few moments before the fuse you had arranged set fire to the factory?
No, I did not.
Your Honor, at this time I would like to introduce an exhibit. And I ask for a short recess so that I can bring it here.
Very well. I declare a recess.
What is the exhibit that the defense attorney will introduce? Will it help him to try and win an acquittal for Benny Harris by attempting to pin the crime on Henry Ballard, or by proving that the fire was caused accidentally? Can this desperate defense succeed in the absence of any evidence against Ballard? We will continue with this trial following the recess. Now we take you back to the courtroom where, when the recess was over, Henry Ballard once more took the stand, and the defense attorney confronted him with a rack holding 5 stoppered flasks, each containing different liquids.
Mr. Ballard, these flasks here each contain a chemical generally used in the manufacture of perfume. Will you examine these liquids and see if you recognize them, please? Smell them if you like.
Very well.
Well, can you say what those chemicals are?
Yes, I'm familiar with all of them except the contents of this fifth bottle here.
You are willing to swear that those chemicals are not dangerously inflammable?
Certainly, except for this fifth bottle. As I say, I know nothing about that.
The fifth bottle is nothing but a combination of the other chemicals mixed together at random to show that even mixed together they are not inflammable.
Oh, I see.
Now, Mr. Ballard, I am going to ask you to demonstrate for the benefit of the jury that these liquids are not inflammable. Here's a box of matches and 5 small saucers. Will you pour out some of the chemical from this bottle into the first saucer and apply a match to it?
Your Honor, I object to this theatrical byplay. There is no question but that none of those chemicals are inflammable.
Your Honor, the defense considers this a most important and vital point in our case. And I ask that this experiment be allowed to proceed.
Very well. Objection overruled.
Go ahead, Mr. Ballard. Here, I will pour out some for you. You apply the match.
You see? Won't burn, as I told you.
Now the second bottle into the second saucer.
The second, then the third and fourth bottles were tried as the jury leaned forward to watch. None of them burned.
Now are you convinced?
Almost. There is still the fifth bottle, the mixture of these other 4. We'll try that, and if it doesn't burn, I'll concede the point.
Very well.
I'll pour some out. All right. Why don't you light it?
You light it.
All right, give me the matches.
Here you are.
Thank you.
Stand back! Put out that match! You'll blow us all the kingdom come! The fumes will explode!
How do you know?
I object!
Because you know this mixture is liquid X.
No!
Your Honor, I charge this witness with perjury, in that he denied any knowledge of the contents, appearance, and odor of liquid X. And I further charge that he committed perjury to conceal the fact that it was he who set fire to his own factory.
Trapped by the trick of the defense attorney, his nerves shattered, Henry Ballard floundered desperately and then broke down completely, admitted that he had set fire to his own factory. The perfumes, which he'd secretly removed from the factory, were recovered, and when Henry Ballard was brought to trial, he was convicted of the crime of arson. And so ended the story of Benny Harris, who was the victim of one of the most diabolical frame-ups ever perpetrated. And the whole trial ended in his complete vindication and the uncovering of a gigantic fraud. For Henry Ballard, the penalty for his crime was a term of 20 years imprisonment.